out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek podcast. I am Frank Hernandez, your Pest Geek, here discussing all things pest. We want to remind our audience to join in on the revolution. That's right, join in on the conversation, be part of the society. Pest Geek Podcast Listeners Group on Facebook. And we're on YouTube. We're on the web, pestgeekpodcast.com. Check out there the notes, everything that we put into the podcast. They're all on there. And now for today's topic.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez. Hey, we're going to be discussing the risk and benefits of using exterior rodent bait stations for residential customers. Before I get into that, I want to let you know that I am working really hard on getting the Pest Geek Academy up and running. We were hoping to get it up by January of this year. Unfortunately, everything conspires. Murphy rides with me to mess things up, and it's been just one of those years where all these projects and all these things we want to do are just taking more time because we're busy. We're growing too as a company, and every time somebody quits or gets injured or gets fired, I got to step in still as a small company and do a lot of the things that other people can't do. But the Academy is coming. I've actually put on the website a link so you can see the page of the curriculum that we're looking at. About a 13 lesson course on introduction to pest control, everything a new technician should know, and the questions that they're going to raise, that they should be raising from the get-go. So they know they're very well prepared to go into the pest control business, or as a technician, knowing what they need to know initially, that stuff that you don't have a curriculum for, that would take you a decade to come up with. This is the stuff that we're working on. So I've got some people excited about it already, that we're doing this. I'm hoping I can get it up by the beginning of the year. It looks like it's going to go into the beginning of next year. By the time I get this up and running and, get it tested, get the Academy tested, all the software, make sure everything's running. There's always bugs. Nothing works when you initially run it. We still got to record all of the lessons. I'm working on the curriculum, and I've been working on the presentations, the curriculum, the slides, all of that stuff, and then recording it and getting it up and running, and then getting the tests run, and all that. So it's going to take a while, but we're moving in that direction. And this is a long-term vision project. This isn't a short-term make money project for us. We have a larger vision for this, nationwide, to do something really, really neat with this. And also we are creating 3 new groups. We are, for the longest time, we as the industry are complaining and whine about a lot of things that we don't do anything about. And I'm one of those guys that if I'm going to whine and complain about it, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not going to sit here and just whine and complain. And one of the things is that do-it-yourselfers are doing pest control, and they're doing it unsafely. Well, guess what? People have been doing that, since DDT was around, when people were handing jars of DDT on a corner from a hardware store so they can solve their bedbug problem. It isn't anything new. The question is, who is the guy that's going to step up to the plate? And basically, who are the people in the neighborhood and in the towns and in the cities that are stepping up to the plate and saying, we live in the information age. People can go online and get the information. The problem is they're getting a lot of bad information. Who are they going to get good information from? And are we willing to guide and lead those people and hope that if we give out good value and good content, and we give out good resources to them, and they see the gross order of magnitude that doing this really isn't as easy. I'm in one of the groups that does bed bug for do-it-yourselfers that does advice for do-it-yourself, and most of the people on there are, homeowners themselves. They're giving bad advice, and whenever we step in to give them good advice, we're basically overcomplicating it and making it too complicated for them, and that's a problem because people think that if they just recommend the product, that this is going to go away. And a lot of people are saying, I've already treated 3 times, with this product that they recommended, and I still have bed bugs. Well, you can't just, apply it anywhere. So the idea is we're in the industry going to take the lead. And I'm leading this. And I told you I would. And we're creating 3 new groups for pest pros to come on. They're going to be localized pest groups. So we're doing one for Florida, we're doing one for California, and we're doing one for Texas, where 50% of the pest control in the country is, approximately. And so we're doing it in those 3 states, and what we're inviting by invitation only, certain people that we know are going to be willing to interact with people and say, listen, this is how you solve it. And by the way, if you can't, I'm here for you. And that's the whole idea, is to bridge the gap between the do-it-yourselfer that's going to get injured, going to hurt his family, doing something because he's not willing to follow label directions, not willing to help him do that, and to, go ahead and do that. But it's by invitation only. I'm inviting people, as I know in groups, and people that I know across the board that have the heart to do this. You got to have your heart in the right place to do it and be able to have the patience to do that. And a lot of you don't, and that's okay. That's not your forum. You're not wired to be in those forums. But hey, that's where we're going. So we're doing that. We also got a blog post site where you can write a blog post and submit it. Don't ask for permission to go on there and give me a list of topics you would like to talk about. Just write a good blog post and you get credit for it, and it's your blog post and you get published if it's worthwhile. Like I said, I'll have editorial discretion on it. If you're a marketer and you're just, the moment I released it, I got a dozen marketers telling me how they can write really good about, solving ant problems with mint oil. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for real professional. We're looking people who are ace, who are, who are experts in this field to write good articles that they can get published on and get good recognition for, and that people who go on my platform will be able to read it and get good advice. We can complain about these companies selling to do-it-yourselfers, but unless you engage them and unless you become involved and engaged, you're going to lose the battle. So you got 2 choices. You can whine and complain about it, or you can engage in the new media, give value, understand that that's what giving value is, and giving good content, and engage. So onto my risk versus benefits of doing rodent stations. And I put it out for testing in groups. I got about 4 groups that I'm active in now, which one of them is mine, the Pest Geek listeners group, and then 2 other groups, the product group I'm on, also Pest Management Professional, I will post on there, and also on the the fraternity, Pest Control Fraternity. Those are the ones because I like the way it's managed. I like the way that people interact. Yeah, there's still a little bit of bickering, but for the most part, people are engaged in a different way as opposed to a lot of the other groups. You got the heat group, which I'm not too active on because I'm just not into heat right now. But I'm focusing my attention on a great bunch of people, in those groups, and engaging. And I put the question out. I have determined to stop selling exterior rodent base stations for residential customers after weighing the risk and benefits to both the customer and the company. And what was shocking to me is I expected a dialogue about, what the benefits are And surprisingly, the only people who responded were people were trying to challenge me on proving the risk. And the risk, what they were up in arms about, and here's what happens when you pose anything like this. Immediately everybody who is on defensive mode, because you're talking about a highly contested issue in our industry, which is rodenticides. And the law was changed for a reason. And the law was made stricter, and products were removed from do-it-yourself over the counter that you couldn't have access to it because of the risk to dogs, pets, and children under 6 of getting poisoned with rodenticides. And immediately everybody challenged me and says, prove to me the risk of installing stations. And everybody totally didn't see the part where I said the risk and benefit to the customer and the company. And it was basically a defensive mode where people are in defensive mode in our industry every time you start talking about not doing something because there's a risk, but we don't look at the benefit. And I'm going to give you a typical call, and we're going to go through all the possible scenarios to help homeowners, property managers, pest control people educate the masses on the reality of doing something. And I get at least 1 to 3 phone calls a day of somebody saying, I've got rodents in my attic. Literally, that's what we get a lot of. Okay, I'm in Florida, and I'm going to talk about my experience over the last 13 years in my market. And then we're going to talk about all the other necessities of doing rodent stations. Okay, but the conversation goes something like this. I'm hearing rats in my attic. Can you come and fumigate for it? Okay. And I'll say, well, there is no fumigation for rodents. I mean, you could tent the house, but that's extreme. You wouldn't do that. I've literally had people calling me, I want you to tent the house because I got so many rats and rodents. I want you to tent it and kill everything. And they're asking us to put out product do you have, and they're expecting this is going to be like an easy thing that we go in there and we just magically put a product out and the next day the rodents are not there anymore. We do have a product that we did test, which is Nature's Defense, which we have used it. But the problem is for indoor, it really smells. And the liquid smells, and the customer doesn't want to deal with the smells and the strong odors. And the product does work. I've used it. I've tested it. The problem is we have limited applications of what we can actually do with it. And it's much more applicable to large commercial than it is to small residential. Industrial has a great application. But that product for residential use to solve a lot of the problems that people have in a property gets very, very expensive to do. Much more expensive than trapping, which is the most easiest thing to do. So my question is, and we're in a market, and I want you to understand the economy, markets, everything is different. We're in a market that is 50% rental, including single family homes. So that makes it much more complicated because now we're dealing with a renter 50% of the time in an apartment, in a home that isn't willing to put the expense to get it done right. They want a cheap, quick solution. And this is the problem with society right now, that chemicals are so cheap and everyone lives in an instant download society where they want everything solved yesterday. And nobody looks at the cause of why you have a rodent in the first place. My first question isn't how we're going to solve the rodent problem. We already know how to do that as professionals. You either trap them with a snap trap, you trap them with a glue board, you put rodenticide outside, or you exclude it. And the third option is the one that nobody ever discusses or nobody ever looks into the client because the client doesn't understand exclusion. The customer doesn't understand rodent biology, rodent behavior. The client doesn't sit in a classroom all day with Bobby Corrigan and listen to his 30 years plus of experience in dealing with rodents like in places like New York. and understanding the rodent behavior. This is something that a client doesn't have the patience for, and this is why these groups have exploded. This is why when we try to go into those groups and give our 2 cents, we're chastised as, well, you just want to get the business, you're overcomplicated, you're making it sound difficult, and this is why we need to engage on our platforms, on our terms, where we control the conversation and we deal with people who really want a solution that is sound, that is safer, that is not negligent. And we have to do it. So what I asked the client is, how long has this been happening? Has it happened before? Yeah, it happened this time last year and it happened again. I says, do you realize that the reason you have rodents in the home is because you have an entry point somewhere that they're always getting into? And if you seal off those entry points, the problem stops. There's no need to keep doing it and going over the same thing over and over. I got clients that buy brand new houses, and within months they have a rodent problem. They bought a house 100 feet in a newly developed area, but within 100 feet there's a cornfield down in Homestead, where all the agricultural area is. And they bought a brand new house and they have rodents already in the home. Why? Because rodents, homes, even though they're brand new, they're not sealed correctly to prevent pests and rodents to get in, because roofers are not rodent experts. They're not pest experts. Their job is the water doesn't get in, and then you leave gaps in between 100 places in that home that a rat can climb up to a tree, jump 8 feet across, land on your roof, and find a way in. And in brand new homes, and when I tell them, well, the solution is to go in there, because the reason they got in is they found a hole somewhere in that roof, which can't be. That's impossible. They'll argue with me. It can't be. That's impossible. This is a brand new house. And the contractor, I know the developer, it's a personal friend, and he builds great homes. And how do you win that argument? So when I tell them I got to go in, no, I just want a solution, trap them, get rid of them. I don't want any of that stuff. See, this is the conversation we need to have that nobody's having. These are the frustrations that you're complaining about, but yet nobody's educating the customer, because the customer isn't on the UC Davis entomology site reading up on technical information. This is why the universities have failed to educate. They're saying, we've got great content, except nobody's reading your content because nobody's looking for technical terms. Nobody knows what they're looking for. And a marketer is always going to beat you out marketing. This is why the first 20 pages are nothing but pest control companies writing content, because this is the conversation I had when I'm at the extension services. You're writing great content, except nobody's reading it. You can justify your time and say we wrote the content, but nobody's reading it. People are posting great stuff about Pest World, except nobody's going to go there. That's a customer. And we live in the information age, and yet there's more bad information going out, and you're complaining about how you're dealing with this, but we need to deal with this. So now you have a customer arguing about his home is, can't be. And then I'll go in with a camera and show them the 5 holes, how that rodent got in, because I kind of know how that rodent got into that attic based on where I'm hearing it. And then when I tell them, listen, it's going to cost you to solve this problem, it's going to be between $300 and $600. And if you have an old home, then I get people who are renting old homes and they have crawl spaces, and all the vents and all the doors in the crawl space are damaged. And now the customer needs to spend $1,200 to $2,000 to do exclusion, to fix all those holes, to fix all the attic holes, because they've allowed the house to be in neglect because they don't see the problem. They're not rodent experts. So I tell them, you're going to spend the average job that we do for rodent and exclusion on the type of home that we have here, which are block homes, with Mexican tile roofs. It's somewhere around $600 to $800. Oh my God, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. I'm renting this place. There you go. That's the problem. So that's what we've experienced. So when we go in and we say we're going to install rodent bait stations and another pest control company comes in to get the contract and all they're doing is getting a salesperson that realizes they're not going to spend the money, but he's a commissioned sales rep. He made the trip over there. He has spent 30 minutes in traffic. He's got to get a sale. And he's going to sell a pest control contract. He's going to sell a trapping contract. He's going to sell a 1-year contract. And he's going to sell a trapping and rodent station outside. And guess what? Nobody did any exclusion work. And that customer still has rodent problems. And they say, we give you unlimited visits. Why? Because the salesman sold a contract for a year. He got his commission. The technician is on production. And he gets a commission on production. He doesn't get an hourly rate. He doesn't get an hourly salary. He doesn't get a salary. He gets a production commission. So if he's got to go back 3 times and trap rats, it's on his dime. And the company, well, they lose to doing another service that they could have done. But here's the reality. That's what goes on in our industry. So when I get the calls and I said, I am not going to sell any more rodent stations because really, here is the other scenario. I'm going to give you scenario number 2. Here it is. Customer calls and said, I just saw a rat go across my fence. Oh my God, I'm so grossed out. And what I got to stop for a minute in there is I'm the professional. I'm the one that's in control. I'm totally unemotional about this. I have emotional intelligence and I sympathize with the client and I try to calm them down. But on a technical, professional level, I'm totally unemotional about this because I'm thinking there is nothing in the world that anybody can do that's going to stop a rat from going across a fence in a yard. What is company going to do? We'll be right out there. We're going to set up rodent stations to calm the customer down. Now we just got an upsell. Selling something for your benefit to get an upsell and selling something that's actually going to solve the customer's problem. You see where I'm talking about risk and benefit? Nobody talks about the benefit to the client. What is the benefit to the client of selling rodent stations for a person seeing rodents outside that are never going to get into his house because his house is well sealed, it's well excluded. He doesn't need rodent service. So what I try to explain to the client is, listen, and here's what it comes down to. I can go out there and I can sell you rodent stations and I can put them on your property. But the reality is that's not going to stop a rodent from going across your fence. You're going to see it again. And then you're going to call me and says your rodent stations don't work. You sold me garbage. You see, I got to be honest with the client and consult the client and say, listen, it's not going to do a thing for you. I got so many rodents in my yard. Well, you've got coconut trees that are dropping. You got palm trees that are dropping seeds. You've got live oaks that are dropping seeds. Of course, you're going to have rodents on your property. They're all coming to get all those seeds you have. You have to get rid of them. How am I going to compete by installing stations when you have 3 palm trees that are dropping all this fruit that rodents like? You got fruit trees. How are we going to compete with all the food that is in this yard with 3 rodent stations around the property? See my situation? See why I asked the question? See why I have the position I have? I'm out here, enjoying and I see a rat run across. There's a lake. There's going to be rodents. Everything is coming for that water. This doesn't solve the problem. A product like, Nature's Defense could be sprayed and rodents don't want to be there. But now we're talking about a very expensive proposition for the client for us to go and spray every month and tell him, hey, it's going to cost you $85 to $125 a visit per month for us to replace all of the sachets to spray the property on the perimeter, to maintain all this. We're talking $125 when I priced it out a month to do all this to make it worth our while. And the customer is going to say no, because that's too much money. So when we evaluate the risk versus the benefit, the customer also weighs the risk versus the benefit. Well, I guess for $125 a month, I can live with a rodent running across my yard. So we give the customer the option, we give them the truth, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to sell you something. And nobody should, as a professional, sell you something that really isn't going to solve the problem, because it's an add-on service, because now you can generate another $2,000 a month on a route by selling upgrade services that people don't need or want. Here's the issue with rodent stations. On a residential level, on a pest control commercial level, they're the most labor-intense thing to manage. You got to open the box. You got to inspect it every month. You got to clean it out. You got to carry 2 buckets, one for dirty bait, one for clean bait. You got to get down on your knees. And when you load up a technician with 15 to 20 stops a day and you tell him he's got to manage rodent stations, and he knows there's no rodents on that property, and the rodents aren't getting in because he's already inspected, and he's not going to inspect it every single month, he's going to cheat. Because you sold rodent stations at $6 a piece to manage, and at $125 an hour, and he's on commission. You know, he's making on $6, he's on 20%, 18 to 20% commission. You know what? He's making $2 a station, and it takes him 10 minutes worth of work. He's not going to work for that money. That's what's wrong in our industry. This is the stuff that you're not going to get on PMP magazine. This is the stuff that, pest management isn't going to discuss. This is the stuff that doesn't get out, that the customer doesn't understand, that nobody will explain to the client. I had a call yesterday from a client who's having a trouble with 2 pest control companies he's hired to do his ficus, his trees. And he says, you're the only person that sat down with me and has educated me this much on why I'm having a problem with my plants. They just took my money and my plants still look bad. I would have not spent the money. Because you can talk yourself out of a sale. I've always had this policy as a salesman. I've been a salesman since I was 16 years old. I was a national and regional sales. I've been in every type of sales, and I always had this philosophy. I rather lose the sale and keep the customer. Lose the sale, keep the customer. Because if I sell a customer something he doesn't need and he finds out, then I lost the customer, I lost my reputation, I lost all the referrals, I lost all my credibility as a professional. When is a rodent station appropriate? Well, that's going to be determined by situational and evaluation and inspection and creating an integrated pest management program for that property. If you've got a shopping center, I get this situation all the time. Companies selling 3 rodent stations for 100,000 square foot shopping center. You're not going to control any rodents with that. It's for show. I used to have a client who was a client of mine, and he opened up a restaurant, spent $150,000 on a build out, and was having rats. Why? You look outside the door, there's a 1-inch gap. You can fit your entire hand underneath that door in the back door of the restaurant. Think about this for a minute. Every other door in that shopping center, he's in a strip mall, has the same problem. You got drop ceilings and walls that connect. Rats are dropping down from pipes in the ceiling because there's drop ceiling coming into his restaurant. They're coming in underneath the door. I said, look, dude, I can put rodent stations outside. I can put repeater traps in here to trap them. The fact is that one of these days, you're going to have a bad experience with your customer, and somebody's going to run out of here, and you're going to be on the front page of the news. Because there's no way, well, I'm going to sue you, if I get a rodent in here because I'm paying you. No, that's the wrong conversation to have. The fact is, you spent $150,000 on a build out, and you won't spend $150 on putting thresholds on those doors that are going to stop the rodents from getting in. And you're making, $50,000 a month in this premium restaurant, which you have a super premium restaurant. This is the mentality. Give me the $150. I'll put the thresholds in, and I'll guarantee they're not going to come in through this bottom door. The problem is you got a strip mall that everybody has the same problem. And there's a company who's a national brand, and there's 30 stores in that shopping center, and they've got 3 rodent stations outside. In the sun, baking, which the chances of a rodent getting in there is going to be 0. With a canal in the back, and shrubbery and trees and waste, and the garbage can is overflowing, and there's a million things wrong, and people want rodent control. What they want is an instant solution to a problem that they don't want to tackle, and they don't want to, but it's really on them to solve. I understand if you have a food processing plant where doors are open all the time and there's product coming in and out, and you got to get a rodent reduction. You're not going to get a rodent eradication in that place. You're going to get a rodent reduction. And the whole idea is to mitigate the risk where there's grain and feed and all these things that you got to deal with. You see, those are the things that you have to decide when you're going to use a rodent station. But what I've proven for the last 13 years is that there isn't a single customer that has ever called me that has a rodent problem that could not be permanently fixed with exclusion, and they wouldn't have it. I've got homes that have been with me for 13 years, have never had a rodent problem because they're sealed. Never. And their neighbors have rodents, and I see the rodent stations out in the neighborhood, and basically they got sold on something that isn't really going to solve their problem. The risk versus benefit. Every time you put out a product, you create a risk. The risk is there. It's an issue of how many stations do you have out as a company, and what's your risk? A company that has 100 stations out, or 200 stations, or 300 stations to manage doesn't have the same risk as a company that has 5,000 stations out. There's going to be an incident, something you're going to respond to. You put out a rodent station and you got 2 Rottweilers in the backyard who are going to tear that station apart. I don't care how good that station. It wasn't designed to handle 2 Rottweilers. It was designed to be tamper resistant. If a kid tries to open it, handle it, not a dog that's going to carry it, chew the heck out of it, and then the dog gets poisoned and the customer's calling you. Situational. Don't put it there. Don't unnecessarily put out a product that carries a risk. The risk versus the benefit. What is the real benefit to the client? What is the real benefit to the company? $6, $18 on average add-on, which is the average add-on if you're lucky to get on 3 rodent stations for a home. Plus the station, plus the labor. When you look at it, it's not even worth it. That's my position. I challenge you to raise the arguments that I've raised. Come to me with the arguments. I posted. You can put notes on it. You can put comments. We're looking to say, hey, what does real pest control look like? How does a professional behave? Raise the standard of our industry. And do things with excellence. We're never going to be perfect, but we can do things with excellence. And that is the difference between when you hire an independent local company, whether it's a 1-man operation or a 10-man operation. They understand what is going on really in their market. They're not focused on how many stockholders do we need to feed this week, but versus what is best for our image, and they're going to take care of their image better than a national brand is, because they got the money to squash bad reviews and things. If you look at the average national account, their reviews, they're like 3.5 stars on average. Compare that to a local company who might be $2-3 million, who might even be, listen, on the PCT 100 as a local company. Doesn't take that much to get there. They're still a local company. And that is the difference between, buying a 39-cent hamburger and buying a $6 hamburger. So that's where I'm going with this. Look at it, analyze your risk, analyze what you're doing. Here's a situation where it might be absolutely necessary to reduce the population. Ticks and mice outside, and rats, and Lyme disease. Risk versus benefit. You're in New Jersey, who has sometimes an explosion of Lyme disease. And by putting out rodent stations and reducing the rodent population, you reduce the risk of Lyme disease and the risk of ticks. Risk versus benefit. It's situational. It isn't a blanket. I don't want to paint with a blanket for us as a company in South Florida, in Miami. It makes no sense. We've proven that it makes absolutely no sense for us. And we're not doing it anymore. When we don't even do rodent work anymore, because when we tell people what it costs to trap, remove, do it, and then seal the problem, they're in at an average of about 600. 50% of people are renting. They don't care for it. And the other half, if they would have cared for it and solved all those problems and they would have fixed their house, a lot of the problems wouldn't be happening. And we can't help you if you're not willing to put up the cost and then hire somebody to do the work. And then you'll hire a handyman and he's a butcher because he doesn't understand rodent, and he will do a job that will never withstand, and you'll still have the problem. And then you'll spend the money and say, yeah, but I spent the money with this guy because you told me to seal it. Yeah, but the guy sealed it wrong. You needed to call an exclusion expert, a guy. And this is why very few exclusion experts are in a lot of places. But the money is made on exclusion. The money is not made in trapping. Solving the customer's trouble one time is much better than dragging it out for 6 years and keep charging them for something that isn't working. Bite the bullet. Get a finance company. Finance the job for them. Figure out a way. Figure out the solution that's going to benefit your client in the long run. That's where I'm going with this. I hope this podcast has been helpful to you. If it has, hey, do me a favor. Give it a thumbs up. Give it a like. Give it a share. Share it with your friends. And I'll be talking to you soon. This is Frank the Pest Geek wishing you a pestacular day. We hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Until next time, have a pestacular day.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.